Jennifer. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 21st, 2025 work session of the Town of Ossining. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any announcements, right? Okay. Glasses. Okay, just a few announcements. Our summaries. For the month of January, Christmas trees will be picked up on the bulk garbage pickup day. The drivers will pick up as many as they can. And if they don't get to it that day, leave the tree at the curb. It will be picked up shortly. The Bethany Arts Community is hosting the 2025 Super Supper along with the Ossining Arts Council. Participants may select a locally made ceramic soup bowl and share a warm meal with other art lovers. This event will be on Saturday, January 25th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Ticket sales end January 18th. Okay, I'm sure they still have a couple. T-Town's annual Eagle Fest will be held Saturday, February 1st at Croton Point Park. The program includes live bird shows, heated tents filled with educational displays, and games for children. February 8th is the date for the Galata House Polar Plunge. Meet up at the Lewis Ingle Park Beach at 9:15 a.m. Neighbors Link is a great source of information and community resources for our immigrant population. Please visit their website at www.neighborslink.org and click resources to register to attend informational webinars about knowing your rights in English and Spanish, and to find out contact information for trusted professionals. Please don't forget to apply for Home Energy Assistance Program, HEAP, to cover your heating costs if you are having trouble heating your home. For assistance, please contact the Westchester County Department of Social Services. As always, our Ossining Public Library has many events, including movies, crafts, meditation, tutoring, yoga, book clubs, and more. Please see their website, ossininglibrary.org, for more information. On the Loft LGBTQ+ Community Center has events, programs, resources, and presentations, all dedicated to providing support to everyone who is a part of the LGBTQ+ community, including many virtual and in-person support groups and clubs for a multitude of different topics. Please check out their website at loftgaycenter.org for more information. Okay, and for more fun and interesting events being held locally, please check out my weekly supervisors update and the supervisor's webpage to see them. Thank you. Right. Do any of my colleagues have anything?
No, not at all.
Okay. Going forward.
So first up in our work session, we have a presentation in regards to the AMD driveway to Stormytown Road.
Happy New Year.
Click that on. Yeah. Right on top.
I think it is on.
No, up to you.
Honestly,
Green
listen
light.
to that.
I heard it. Okay. Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you this evening about our driveway. And with me tonight is Team Ossining UFSD. We have our architects and engineers, our construction management firm, and of course, our board president, Christine Mangiamelli. And joining us, we have people you all know, Jim Minahan, Jared Mance, and the person of all things money, Alita Zuber. So we are here to give you an overview of our presentation and to answer any questions you have. Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tim from CPL. Thank you. Right.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to meet tonight and do the overview of our project. We did have the opportunity to meet with Supervisor Feldman, Valerie Menastra,
Paul Frioli.
Paul Frioli, Pete Connolly, Highway, and our OPD was here. So we had some a good discussion, a pretty good overview of some highlights that we'd like to sort of respond through today, if that helps. But first I thought maybe we could do a walkthrough of the plan sheets. Sure.
I'm sorry, can you just first start stating your name and what your company is and just introduce who you
Sure
are?
thing. So I'm Tim Moot, M-O-O-T. I'm Vice President with CPL. I'm the Civil Team Leader. On the screen tonight virtually is Bryce Reeser. He's on our Civil PE that helps on the stormwater design. Additionally, I asked and coordinated through Paul to get Creighton Manning representatives. So we have Jared Anderson and Mark Nadalny. They were involved with the road diet, and so we have sort of had dialogue and coordinated with them to help satisfy some of the traffic questions. So they're on in addition to our physical team, so we feel like we have everything pretty much well-rounded. So I don't know, is there the ability to show the plans digitally or? Yeah. So I'll sort of talk to the paper if that's okay, and you guys can.
But you're gonna need to bring your. Here, take this one.
You guys have trouble.
You okay with seeing the screen?
So far, we'll see.
So far, you don't see anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I hold it?
Yeah. Please do.
Start singing. So this is our first overview. This is a generic plan. It's not intended to be an exact engineering drawing. But as superintendent indicated, we're here to talk about the driveway. And that's a standalone phase 1 project that you will see on the screen in the orange sort of highlighted area. And components of that are this driveway, which basically comes out onto Stormy Town Road. And we've added additional internal parking. We looked at that as a priority because right now staff parks all along Van Cortlandt there, and we're trying to get off-street parking back onto the school property. So we looked at this as a big concession to alleviating some of the localized traffic. In order to do this, we recognized traffic was a concern throughout the community. We were aware of the road diet study being done by Creighton Manning and basically integrated our site-specific study and took into account the road diet study. Also shown on this plan is a future phase project. At the time, phase 1, this driveway project was conceived and moved forward. There was another capital bond vote for the larger project, which would include a new 7-8 building and again, additional parking to facilitate that. This is the rough outline of a building footprint and then additional parking. We recognize to do this project, the existing conditions are wooded lands plus basically a hill. And in order to facilitate this design, there'll need to be tree clearing and extensive site grading. The proposed building project initially was thought to happen a couple years down the road. The vote passed recently, so we're in the very early stages of design. But I'll say publicly, because I mentioned to you that it probably wouldn't happen until another year or two down the road, but there's talk now because of economy of scale and basically dispatching tree cutting and grading that this second phase, at least for the initial grading and tree clearing, may happen sooner than later. All of this graphic is intended to show also indicates our kind of preconceived notions for stormwater detention. We recognize that, there's constraints locally, indications of flooding downstream. So all of our stormwater design would anticipate the full build out of this project. May not get completely implemented, but the intent of a revised phase 1 would be our parking and driveway in the orange shaded area and basically rough grading, grass and tree clearing in the blue hashed area. We're not talking about sports fields. That's off the table. Drawings for now. And that this drawing's been basically revised to remove the sports fields. That would be a complete separate project down the road.
If I can add, just to start, the point behind this, and I want to thank some members of Facilities Committee who were on it, and just when I first arrived in Ossining, touring the Claremont and AMD campus, spent a long time looking at school safety. I was like, how do you get emergency vehicles in and out of here, right? And how do you do it in a timely fashion? Counting the number of residents that lived up there, 2,000 students, an additional 100 staff, and the number of buses. So looking at this from a safety perspective, it started out that was a conversation, obviously, that had existed in Ossining for quite a while. And I was like, there has to be a way for us to have a driveway. If I have to get an ambulance, police have to get in, a fire has to get in. And when we did a survey for our facilities project with the community, that really resonated. People were like, how can, it's tough up there now. What can you do to help alleviate? So I have to give a shout out to Jim Minahan. We were standing also looking at bus traffic, and part of our safety approach of this was to petition the New York State Department of Transportation, the light at the bottom between Van Cortlandt and Route 9. You had 2.5 seconds, basically you had 29 seconds. You had to handle walkers, you had to handle traffic, and how many buses could you get out of off Van Cortlandt at that period of time. And I think we calculated 2.5 buses, Jim. So we studied that if there was a smart light feature associated with that, and we could get traffic off that quicker and it would help alleviate, because a lot of times the Ossining Police Department would be dispatched to help move traffic off Van Cortlandt. So the New York State Department of Transportation responded in a really quick time and increased that light capacity to 45 seconds. 48, thank you. Every second matters, every second matters. So again, very, very responsive. And then taking a look at the road diet project that was in place, a lot of things came together. There were a lot of really good congruencies associated with that. So how could we create a driveway that would address and continue to address safety issues? The Board of Education was clear, and I think, and I do appreciate the amount of time Liz and I have been able to meet. We talk about student safety. They did not want to create another place where kids would walk to and walk from. So again, under Jim's and Alita's suggestion, actually, we hired a New York State consultant and created a child safety zone area for that. They did a comprehensive study. Again, that's available on our website. And that area is now designated as a child safety zone area, meaning that all the kids that live there now and into the future, as long as the board adopted a resolution as such based on that study, they will receive transportation from that area to school, because we didn't want kids to be walking there and we didn't want parents to drop off. We wanted to be as a driveway. Then the second piece that we presented to the community was to install, and again, I want to thank particularly Angelo and others who did suggest this, to have a safety gate associated with it, with some sort of signaling between fire, ambulance, and police vehicles that could open the gate when we weren't using it. So they could have access to other parts of the village and town, and also to help residents who live in that area. So that was the thought process that went into it, to take 125 parking spots off Van Cortlandt, put them on the campus to do that. So these were all incorporated into our bond vote and our budget vote, the plans, and the voter authorization. We are grateful and proud that we have that to do that. So that's what we were building on. A lot of concern too from the board about water and wetlands, and we found out about the long-eared bat and other things in the woods. And I love that stuff, so I find that absolutely fascinating. But again, a lot of intentionality behind protecting what we need to protect, not overtaxing the town's sewer systems and water systems, like in many places right now. where, you know, 100-year storms versus 10. So just being mindful of all of that. And the board was clear when we put the bond out that that area would stay grass. You know, we didn't want any impervious surfaces for many reasons. So again, that's the intentionality and thought process. Many of you know that. I'm just, for the record, just kind of restating it to help frame the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to add on the traffic and the retiming of the lights, I know when we met earlier, it was another concern about Cedar Lane.
Right, if you're putting the buses down, you know, they're coming out Storytown, they're gonna be coming, you know, one light up from where you retimed it, so are they gonna put another smart light?
Right, and that's
There.
why we integrated with Urban Anthony and Jared Anderson. I don't know, I wasn't on the call when you were there with Dave Hastings, but Dave's opinion was these retiming of lights are the simplest thing to do. They're flexible. You know, it's not like a one and done. You can kind of modulate that till you get it zeroed in, but that they've already done it once already, and that would be the intent to address it on Cedar Lane as well. So.
Great, yeah, I mean, working with the road diet and the other time light, you may not meet at all 45 seconds.
Right.
On that one, you may, you know, want to put a few, anyway.
Yeah,
as long
I
as
look
there's-
at it
as long
like,
as there are engineers that.
right, look at it like
So I
fine
can't-
tuning a radio signal, right?
Exactly.
You have the ability to adjust it, so. So thank you, Mary, for all that background there. I think I've pretty much touched on the main parts of the intent of this drawing. If you want, we could, the intent of the next 3 drawings were to basically zoom in a little bit and give you a little more detail. One would be more information on this driveway entrance. There's some interior detail of the parking lot and whatnot.
Can I ask one question
Sure.
on that drawing? Sorry. So you're gonna take down the trees in the entire blue zone, or you're waiting?
The goal would be, we dispatch to do the orange, and once the orange is done, they would go right into the blue. If you think about it, it's one contractor getting them out to the site and having that done all at once instead of coming back and forth.
Okay, will some of the, because the trees really do soak up a lot of water, will some of the drainage be in place before you take the trees down?
We are looking into building this lot, but I think in sequence, no. I think honestly, you know, the intent would be to manage what we have in terms of this lot and the road. That would have to be in place.
I just want to add, I'm not sure if you're aware, that the residents that live on Van Cortlandt along or adjacent to AMD, they are experiencing now severe flooding. So I'm just hoping that that's going to be taken into
So-
account.
I'm not aware of that, but I can assure you our drainage is not relying anything on Van Cortlandt. What's existing and going down is gonna stay. All of our drainage will be going this way. To your question though, relative to the stormwater permit with DEC, they have a 5-acre maximum, so we can't just go and destroy this entire area. I think it's 4.5 acres in the orange and maybe 14-ish in the blue. So we would have to do this in organized fashion at 5-acre increments. And we couldn't move, we could cut trees down, we just can't disturb the ground. But we could do that in 5-acre increments. We can't move to the next 5 acres until the first 5 acres is stabilized from a stormwater aspect.
From a stormwater point of view.
Liz, I just have one question. So you're gonna basically clear cut, including the potential
Field.
future fields that you're not anticipating doing at any point in time at this
Correct.
moment. So
Because-
that's something that, you know, because
I mean, knowing the Austining voters are gonna support having fields for the schools, at some point.
But I think we
But-
discussed, Mary, right, that'd be a future project down the road. It's.
Yeah. For a lot of reasons. So at this point, we're looking to make it grass and seeding.
oh, so then you're gonna take out the tree stumps.
So we could cut the trees all down and not rip out the stumps. That's not considered disturbance. We need to focus on ripping out the stumps and building the stormwater for our phase 1. So let's just say for the purpose of this, it's 5 acres. So we would need to build this orange area and have it stabilized with our stormwater. And then from there, we could start ripping out the stumps and doing grading at 5 acre increments. But again, we couldn't go to the next 5 acres and disturb that until the first 5 acres was
We
stabilized.
can't make it worse.
Right.
Right, so you're not really gonna grass it then, it's just gonna be clear cut. And then.
I mean, I don't know, like, we brought our construction manager, I mean, we're guessing, like, I don't know, could you frame it for tree clearing versus, yeah,
So Chris Hannibal, Harris Contracting, construction project managers for Ossining Central Schools. As far as that sequence, yes, going back to what Tim had mentioned, the area shown in red would be stabilized. The area in blue would be clear cut, trees would be dropped. Then we would then progress in 5 acre increments to go back and actually remove stumps. The areas would be graded, the areas would be topsoil and seeded, they'd be established, and then you move to the next section. So that by the end, the entire area that's shown in blue would be grassed.
What's the timeline for that?
The timeline for the, lack of a better term, the timeline for the clear cutting would be almost all at the same time over a, what's the window, Tim, for the clear
the
cutting?
bats are November to March.
So the clear cutting would take place then. The actual construction process, what I just outlined a couple minutes ago, would be from next October till the following September. So there'd be, that sequence would take place over about a year timeframe.
So, I mean, where I'm leading up to, is we have a cemetery below, right below, you can't see it on here. That does experience stormwater challenges already. And when they built some of the previous fields, we had some washout of some of the older sections. We really don't want to re-experience that. Not good for the families, it's not good for us, it's a very bad look. So with, us getting 5, 6, 7 inch rainstorms periodically through the years, and I looked up how often we've had that in the last couple of years, it's not infrequent. There's superstorms and they're happening several times a year. So I just want to know that there is a protection in place to make sure that it's not running first and foremost through the cemetery, because we don't want anybody to have their loved one have to see that. And then, it's a very steep hill, so you've got Torview on one side and the cemetery on the other. So just as you are taking down the trees that drink, have something in place to direct the water at the very least away from the two areas that would flood.
Right, so what we've done, I asked Bryce, our stormwater guy, to look up the rainfall data of what we use. We use almost real-time data, that's part of the regs from Cornell. And I think on the real-time data, your 100-year rainfall event is 9 inches. We normally, by the regs, designed to manage a 10-year storm and a 100-year storm. One thing we can consider, and we discussed, and we don't have the answer and can't commit to this yet, but what if we were to raise the notch to go to a 25 and maybe 150 or a 200-year storm? We don't know the cost implications of that, so we're gonna look at it and see if there's a way we could buffer in some additional.
I
Pass.
took a look, I printed it out and put it upstairs, of course. But wrote down the storm totals, and really it looks like you need to design to 7-inch, 7.5, 8-inch storm.
Yeah.
Which we're getting a couple times a year. We seem to be in this little pattern with Yorktown and Somers and in this little pattern as it comes up the river and between the mountains. We're just getting this rainfall every once in a while between, 5 and 8 inches, 3 times in the last year.
No, we
So-
understand, and
So,
that's
it's
that's
a
all
real concern.
actively being recorded for all communities and
Mhm.
goes into this database, because the old way where they were published storm events that we were just blowing out of the water, so, but I
Okay,
assure
so-
you,
so
we're
if you're asking
using.
me what I want you to design to kind of, that 9-inch sounds like a very nice.
Bryce, do you recall, was it 7 or was it 9 on your chart? I don't want,
We've had a bunch,
yeah,
so I don't know if the one that,
well, what we're gonna do is look at what the,
Sorry,
look at local weather stations and just see if there's a correlation. Go ahead, Bryce, sorry.
it's 9.29 inches is the 100-year storm.
So that's what we would be designing to. So if you're saying you're seeing 7, we're already above that. But what I'm suggesting is maybe we go even a bit more, just for extra capacity.
just because Mother Nature likes to.
But again,
Laugh.
it's gonna be a costly.
So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a concern. Okay, thank you. Sorry, continue.
Okay, so let's move on if everybody's good with the over picture.
Valerie, are you good with that one?
Well, I was just gonna add, I think we should just make sure the residents know that the road is not gonna go through Van Cortlandt though, right? It's gonna go on your own property.
It's on our own property.
One
Yeah,
thing to stress,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And it's a drive.
Yeah, we're
It's on the
currently in
road.
the driveway, right?
Nobody gets to use.
So again, currently there's, for lack of a better term, a logging road through there or a trail or what have you. We're not just going in
Mark,
and
can you
cutting
go-
this in.
Can you get the bottom of the line?
And we zoom out of here more. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we chose that alignment because there are designated wetlands on both sides. We have hired a wildlife biologist to do the birds and bunnies and bats and the wetlands and all that. So, we flagged these, we made our submission. We're trying to do really minimal disturbance to the actual wetland because of the way the road is naturally running through there. There's going to be a pull off for bus drop off. And then again, up in that upper corner is a snippet. Unfortunately, the way the pages are split, you don't see the whole lot on this page, but the next page will show the continuation of that lot. And then, as I mentioned before, anything, say, to the south of this is existing. And all that would just be reconstructed with new pavement, wouldn't change the drainage increase at all going down Van Cortlandt to your point there. I have a blow up of this, so if you want to just hop to the next sheet real quick. So this is again, whoop, go back one forward. Yeah, that one. So this is a continuation of that new lot. There's an existing maintenance facility there. This is, a lot of this area behind there is sort of a gravel lot. It's where they stage things. So, again, there'll be some clearing back there, but it's not like we're clear cutting the whole area. It's just widening it. And then again, these are all existing pavement, buildings and pavement around there. If it's not pavement, it's basically considered impervious because it's gravel. If you want to move forward on that. Yep. And then lastly, we looked at. Sorry.
Sorry,
no,
no, that's okay.
Did I go too fast?
No, I was wanting to ask that question.
Go ahead. You want to go back one?
No. Hold on, I'm okay. Thank you.
Sure. You wanna
Yes.
comment on the intersection? Where it comes out this time?
No, well, it's right there.
Yeah.
I can see it. The stop signs are coming, right?
Yeah, that's where I was.
Yeah,
gonna go
okay,
next.
as long as you're going there.
So I was gonna zoom in on, the challenge to bringing this road alignment in is the curve at Stormy Town. We did a site distance per the DOT regulations, and basically we made it on one direction and not on the other. We looked at different methods to basically attenuate that situation, and the three-way stop is the most logical. It's kind of employed in other areas of your town. And we staged those stop bars far enough away so that you still can maintain sight distance between. We've also added a big part of this for safety would be for the town to designate this a school zone. And by your code, it's lowering the speed limit to 15 miles per hour in this area. So again, we kind of depicted the 15 mile per hour school zone. And then basically, per Mr. Connolly's suggestion, we added some temporary new traffic pattern signs just because it's going to be new for everybody. So those will be somewhat temporary, but the idea is to pre-flag that this is a new intersection.
People go quickly through that area, so, it's a concern. So yes, you definitely need that.
And then sort of a concession, we've extended the sidewalk here to the school property. Just so that there's a continuation, there would be a sidewalk on our driveway, there'd be site lighting, and we already talked about the.
So did you
gate.
add a sidewalk on Stormy Town? Because I'm concerned that one day a school board that isn't yours, current one, will say, why are we busing these people? We're gonna decide not to bus these people and make them walk, and I'm gonna end up having to put sidewalks on Stormy Town Road.
First of all, hopefully, I've been at this a long time, never met a school board, but it is possible. I'm not saying it's not, but they tend to be very focused on child safety, and they had a formal resolution on this in a very public way. So I can't, I'm just saying that the possibility of that, while it does exist, I don't see it on a scale of 1 to 10 is high. However, with that said, in terms of sidewalks, when we created the child safety zone, it was to prevent people from dropping kids off and having them go in that way, right? We didn't want to
That's our
encourage
concern.
walking where it's not safe to walk. So when we put this out to the voters, it was with that intentionality. Now, if there is a plan by the village or town of Husting to do more walkable communities, grants for certain sidewalks, ones that could connect, this current plan doesn't have voter authorization to extend that to the nursing home area. That would have to be a consideration later on. And I would imagine if there was a town plan, there would be a lot of grants available if we had a plan that hooked up to other ways, because walkable communities are important in the state of New York. So I could say, I can't speak for the board, but I would think they would be quite open to, because I know individual board members have expressed the need for more sidewalks, that would be something, but I wouldn't want to create a sidewalk that would encourage parents to drop kids off there, and when it didn't hook up to anything else right now. So I'm happy to help and work with the town.
You don't think that this would be the time to, while you're designing and doing the construction, that this would be the time to put it in place?
It without a further plan as to where it's going, I can't speak for the board, but this would be my feedback. Without a plan as to where it's going to go and where it's connected to, well, my in-basket question, would it encourage parents to do what we don't want them to do? We call that a child safety zone area for that reason. We don't want kids walking there. However, if there was an extended walkable communities plan with the town, the village, and the school district, that's a different message. You're sending a different message to parents and young kids that these are the areas we're doing this together, and this is a comprehensive plan with that.
I just want to mention that we should all take under consideration what the future of Executive Boulevard may look like. We don't know if there's going to be other businesses or housing that is in that area, which is, obviously on Stormy-Town Road. So I don't know if we, need to also take this into consideration, what you're talking about, sidewalks.
There are consistently proposals for more and more development in the area, so.
Right, sure.
And we are looking, we
Understand.
have looked at sidewalks and making that more walkable before. We know that people walk to one of the businesses, the Genetics Corporation on Executive Boulevard.
Mhm. We
it would
understand.
be Good,
Yeah.
and it's something that we're considering. We've talked with our grant writers about it before.
Mhm.
They said once the school puts something there, then they're probably a shoe-in. But
Mhm.
so it is something that we've talked about, not necessarily, maybe not this particular board, but the previous iteration of it.
Right.
So it is on the table that we're gonna be trying for a more walkable,
Right.
likable area. So we were kind of hoping that
That's
you
my
would design to
that was my
with
one
us.
safety caveat about it right now, without it part of something that's very formal and understood. And I don't know how many years in difference. And the first technical piece is, I have no idea how much a long sidewalk of that size would cost. I think we were looking towards looking at drainage, and
Okay.
that was not in our voter authorization, but the board looks at facilities every single year. So my point being, I think it's a great idea to add more sidewalks on one of those people. However, I would like to see it in a bigger, and the point about, will it encourage behavior on the part of parents when they see this large sidewalk, which at this moment, if we built it, didn't connect to anything else except the school? Am I now encouraging the behavior I tried to prevent by creating a child safety zone?
Mariana, I was just curious, when it's purpose, the child safety zone, what would it take to not be a child safety zone? Is that just a school board resolution, a vote, or does that have to be applied to the state?
Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the purpose of the road to change, right? Now it's just emergency vehicles and buses.
Right,
If
right.
it turns to be an
We want
everyday.
it to be a driveway for the school district, but a future board. But again, all of those things, Jim is right, whether you have sidewalks, that could then take away the child safety zone feature that we voted to put in place, so parents wouldn't have to have kids walk from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a great policy question. So it's, so many things are interconnected. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, just
That's okay.
putting
Okay.
places on a map.
Anything more on this sheet? Because then if not, I'd like to jump to.
Matt, anything? Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering also, would the town have to do some work at that intersection?
It's all on
all
the
done on
school.
schools?
School would fund the stop bars and signs and all that.
And we would do the law to create the,
Yeah, that's the big task would be to designate that to school zone to drop the.
What is? Sorry.
Well, we looked at the code and I don't know, Paul, was it the village or one of them had
No,
a
it's-
formal? But it was a designation of a school zone to make it a 15-mile-an-hour school zone.
Oh,
I think you did it already on Van Cortlandt.
It's in the town code.
be one of the things that the town would do.
What's that, Bryce?
It's a section in the town code. I don't have it at my fingertips, but
But I think probably, I don't know if it's a formal resolution or how it works, but
It would be a law. It's
It's a little-
in a village and town code, and the village did do this. Hello, it's in the village code and town code, and when the village first did it for all of the buildings in the village and the town. We had separate descriptions in the code written for each of the buildings, including the town buildings. So that it's not much, it's a resolution with a description.
is that something the town would prepare or would you need our help with that or? Or if we had an
I
example?
think I'd like to talk to Paul a little bit more about that to understand.
We weren't looking for it tonight. We're just saying, yeah, it would be a to-do item. So if there's no more questions on the plan, what I'd like to do, because Valerie shared a nice list of all the things we discussed together, I'd like to just touch on them. So everybody, is that all right? Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or you could put the first, whatever it's.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm getting reminded it is in our current comprehensive plan that we are actively working on walkability and bikeability throughout the community, and that would include this section.
So the first item on our kind of workshop, pre-workshop meeting, was, does our access road entrance accommodate the Osling Fire Department ladder truck? We were able to confirm with our Creighton Manning colleagues at 47 feet. Is that right, Alice, Bryce?
Yeah.
47 feet was the length and we ran that and it works. So that's a check and we can write a written response to these if you'd like. The town recognizes the project. This is number 2, the 100-year stormwater calc. We sort of talked about that already. And what I'd like to say is, and Mary touched on it, we'll look at this stuff and we'll work with the construction manager to come up with costs on a few of these items. One being additional capacity in the stormwater. 2 would be the sidewalk extension, or we'll look at that and come up with a cost, right? And then 3, Osling PD brought up the license plate reader and the guard shack. So again, we'll coordinate with the CM to come up with what out-of-pocket cost, but it's again gonna be up
Right,
to the
again,
district.
so, go back to what we told the voters and we voter authorization, you don't build a guard booth without putting a body in it. And that's an additional personnel conversation that we didn't discuss at all through that process. A card reader, I would, and obviously that's something you would have to speak with counsel of. We have federal Educational Privacy Rights Act for students. We would have high school kids that would drive in there. There are all kinds of policy questions upon who would store the data, where it would go, what's the expectation of privacy of parents and others who would go in there, and who would manage all of that. There's a lot in there. The technical piece, we can get a price for that, but to me, the heavy lifting of that conversation is all of what I just explained.
Right, so for instance, at the waterfront, the police department got a grant. And I'm sure they'd be willing to work with you, but, we have a water park there. Just should somebody decide to adopt a child that is not theirs, or steal something, or vandalize, they have plate readers that, know who goes in and out of the waterfront area. They were able to get that because it's, a vital infrastructure because of the train station and also because there are public gatherings in the area. So, so just for safety, should something happen with a child, that's the main reason we wanted it
Right,
in there.
right.
So,
Those questions still remain, and it's very much a question we ask inside of ourselves, because we have to meet as a district emergency response team on regular meetings. We do have cameras within the school, so we have policies that support where we put them, why we put them, and how we use them, where the data is backed up, where it's used. There is federal statute on what is an area you can't videotape and can videotape. And of course, overall student safety is super important to us and to everybody. But again, that scenario is a scenario that we deal with now in different ways, like, alarms on doors or certain other things. Yeah.
good.
Right. Okay.
Paul?
Hi, thanks again. I just want to append what you two are dialoguing. One of the main reasons, the sidewalk, we were back and forth with that ourselves when we had our first internal meeting. The one thing that came up from the police and then from our review that we had on the third floor was, we really don't want to be, the police don't want to be left with policing the folks dropping off their children at the sidewalk if there was to be one constructed out in front of the building. That's problematic because they're stopping in a lane of traffic and we're not widening the road. So nobody wants that, right? It's not safe and it's also causes traffic. It happens right now around the high school. So we're trying to discourage that. The reason we thought, it's the same reason we felt that the sidewalk that does come all the way out, it's still conducive to, okay, Johnny, I'm gonna drop you off here, stand the sidewalk and walk in. So they're back and forth. Hence the guard booth wasn't so much expected to be manned, and I don't think they were, and I'm speaking on behalf of the police, so if I get it a little wrong, I'm sure they can jump in at a later date. But the guard booth or a gate or whatever, or just a person, a monitor, was really there just to reinforce what I think you guys are presenting this as, a bus access. Because there was nothing really on the plan that we saw that would prevent the Van Cortlandt folks from continuing up and out that way to get to 9A faster, or to get to Stormytown faster. There didn't seem to be a mechanism in place to discourage the through traffic versus telling all the folks that are coming up Van Cortlandt, dropping off and heading back down Van Cortlandt, which is really what we're designing, with Jared's on the call, I believe. That's the traffic count that we're using to design our timing at that intersection that we did in concert with your project. So on behalf of the town, I think the folks in the town really want to know, is this going to be a bus entrance to drop off children in perpetuity? Or is this just initial until it eventually may become a bunch of fields and an expanded school where it does become a full-blown secondary access for campus access to and from? Because if that's the case, then we should start thinking about putting that infrastructure in now so you can grow into that versus not having an appropriate entrance and exit if you do build the campus out to what it potentially could be under future projects.
We will be adding electricity there, and it was during the facilities committee meeting that we are adding a security gate that closes and will be available for fire, EMT, and other first responders through some sort of coding system through their signaling. If they have to get through, it will open, but that is not going to be an open road or not school. It is our expectation that because we're building 125 car parking lot in the back of the current AMD to alleviate cars parking on Van Cortlandt, that certain staff members will park there. It's our expectation that during the day that will happen in addition to buses, but it is not meant to be a road or an open driveway for people to use as a shortcut. We are installing electricity and a gate to prevent that from happening.
And that system, I believe, Jared, Yelp system, when they click their mic or their siren or what have you, it comes on. So that power gate's proposed here. Internally, there's another gate proposed to preclude that, and that would be managed by the district. And this kind of segues into our other discussion, if I could call on Jim, because he knows all the traffic counts and the way we kind of look at this scenario, like Mary said originally, it's one way in, one way out. And from a security aspect, it's not good. From a traffic aspect, Van Cortlandt is getting hammered with all the traffic, both up the hill and down, and including Claremont. And I think when we spoke to Jim, by the initial maybe bus count without the new building, we were talking how many buses might eventually go out that way? Was it about a dozen? So we're already relieving Van Cortlandt initially by 12 buses. When we get to the far down the road, when the building's built and it's in full operation, maybe 20 buses. So we're saving Van Cortlandt in the long run by having this access point. That's just on pure traffic, but security is the number one concern at this point. So,
And I've seen the gates that let the fire trucks through there.
Yeah.
They were pretty well.
There's a couple out there in the community.
Yeah, there's a couple in the community that have the systems
yelp
that
system.
recognize the first
Yeah.
responders.
Yeah.
So they
So-
work.
I think that covers that list that we went down on our meeting, unless there's other new.
Supervisor, I got
Items
one
or-
more question.
Sure.
I don't know if it's better for you or for Paul. Paul, you brought up the infrastructure. Is there any infrastructure improvements that will be done while this construction is going on? Like as far as our water pipes, our storm pipes being connected to loop them that are dead ends now or anything like that?
We haven't got to the full design of the site utilities for the new building again, because that's a future project, right? But I think Bryce is our engineer on the line. I think we talked about picking up and running off. There's an easement that runs through. I think we said it was a 12-inch water main. I don't know if it's captured on this, but I think it runs somewhere through here. So there's adequate both for fire and supply that we would tap off of to feed the building.
There's no utilities going in underneath that road, that emergency road.
Not this time. Well, there'll be drainage because we, again, are moving the drainage to the back.
Gotcha.
But again, we haven't really looked in detail for the building yet, so. Anything we do, we've contemplated, normally we'll put sleeves under the road, so if at future time, especially for power, still needs to be figured out, gas and all that, so.
In processing, I gotta say, I'm not comfortable with clear cutting an area before you even have a plan, a bond, I mean, to area to, dig the drainage corridor and, riprap area to contain. Understanding that might be necessary, but clear cutting an entire forest before there's even understanding that somewhere down the road it may happen, but before there's an actual plan for fields or, just clearing that entire area of trees.
So that's part of it, clearing the trees, because we need the space, but now we gotta think of terrain, right? It's a hill and then it goes down the hill.
Right.
So in order to construct the building in that lot here in the blue area.
The
That-
initial blue area, I'm talking about the green shaded area.
Right, but in order to build just this area here roughly, this is on top of the hill.
Right,
And we're talking about what's called trying to do a balanced cut to fill. So we would basically shave off the top of that hill to make a level area to construct on. So now we have all this excess earth material. And the idea is to use that earth material to mimic the contours that are there already, which is basically
to
a
terrace.
tiered system all the way down.
So you're not, so there is, so I think this is a little bit more complex, right? Because you first said you were just clear cutting and then you're gonna grass the field. Now you're saying you're gonna cut and then you're gonna now like basically take and fill that portion of the field. So I don't
Fill
think
in?
we saw any of the stormwater stuff associated with how all that's going to.
Well, so far, this is where it's tricky because we're doing earthwork with grass at the end of the day, right? We're not creating any impervious surface relative to stormwater for this phase. It's grass field. The main stormwater features are relative to our phase 1 driveway. So
Right,
there
but you
will
said
be
you're gonna do it in
infrastructure.
5 acres increments.
Right.
And it's not, I'll defer to Paul, but, think there's probably some additional information.
Hey, Tim, if I could jump in here quick. Again, Bryce Reeser with CPL and Tim. When we're doing the blue section with the building withstanding, just talking about the clear cutting and the grading in chunks, there will be a temporary sediment and erosion control plans associated with those 5-acre chunks, which will include various types of sedimentation and erosion control practices that are standardized by New York State. And those will be installed during each one of those 5-acre chunks of graded areas. And those are temporary to control the runoff that has occurred during a project such as this until the permanent stormwater practices can be installed.
So I'm envisioning a lot of silt fencing is what I'm thinking.
Silt fencing will have sediment basins or sediment traps.
Temporary swales that may run at an angle across
Correct.
that runoff so that there's no direct channelized flow.
And those sediment basins or traps are sized specifically for the areas that they're that are
Managed.
being affected. So say we have a 5-acre area, that 5-acre area would be sized for a specific storm or sediment trap, which would collect the water and catch basically any sediment runoff that would occur during the construction before it's stabilized.
And so what we're saying now, to your point and what you recognized was originally we were gonna do a temporary intro. Now we're saying, let's go ahead and put a permanent size thing that could, be
That can direct
oversized.
the water away from the cemetery, which
And
is
then-
absolutely appreciated.
And then we created this green rectangle for future development of when the actual impervious surfaces will be employed. That permanent structure would go in there.
While we're doing this, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't, that's why the 5 acres, the temporary storm drains, the temporary measures, we can't make the area worse
No.
than what exists right now with trees.
Right.
That's not allowed.
Yeah.
So you have to incorporate all of these things and you have to do it in chunks.
And it has to be managed and stabilized before we can go on to
To
the
the
next
next
5 acres.
Okay, just because, the roots hold the ground together, the trees drink the water, and it's already a very wet area and has been even before we experience these storms.
See, that's why the state requires us to do it that way, because they understand that.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Oh.
sorry. That's why the state requires that, because they understand that that's the point.
I'm hearing you, I'm just not liking it.
And one more point. So the project will have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And so the plan incorporates everything. So it'll incorporate our first phase, it'll incorporate the second phase, it'll incorporate the tree clearing, the permanent features, the temporary features. All of that will be prepared in a document that's kept on site during the whole construction process, for viewership from anybody at any time. That's part of the permit requirement from New York State. So all of that information is included. It will be public information, and it'll have to be adhered to by the contractor and the owner.
And so like I say, the orange area would further into full-on construction. So a lot of this other work. Yeah.
So again, just for clarification, because it's a little different, what you're talking about, the scope isn't different, but the timeline's a little different. So just so we're clear, the SWIP that you're gonna put in place, Bryce, is fine. That's what we expect. It's what everybody else does. The maintenance of that is gonna be with your contractor on the existing project. So it's sounding like you're gonna roll right into the next project. There's not really gonna be downtime, which is a little different than what we talked about initially. It was gonna be a second phase, a to be determined. But now this SWIP is, because your SWIP isn't gonna just remain open indefinitely. You're gonna roll right into the second phase?
It's not that clear. So yeah, again, it would be phased. That's what I think that's what you're asking, in that the area in red would be phase 1. That would be excuse me, let me back up. The area in red, the area in blue would be clear cut, trees would be dropped. The area in red would then be constructed all the way to the point where we have stone, we're able to establish, so there's, what's that? Stabilization of the area in red. Once that area in red is completed, then we would then move on to 5-acre chunks under the temporary stabilization that Bryce had mentioned using the SWIP plan. So all those items will be laid out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce, within that SWIP plan, exactly how I'm talking, how it's going to get phased.
So the red area would be stone as in it's a base, not paved yet, but just your basic base.
Yes, when we have clearances that it's stabilized and
That it's
again,
stabilized, it's not completed, it's just stabilized, your base is there, your drainage is in place.
Yep.
Then you're gonna cut before you pave that area.
I think we would even want to pay probably
You-
a separate contract.
you could, but again, I think at the point of having stone, you are then stabilized.
Correct.
So then the contractor would be able to then continue with removing stumps and establishing the grassed area in 5-acre increments. Moving either the way back or possibly moving our way forward.
But our intent would be to continue to get that whole orange area, red area. Paved. So we're
Yes.
not gonna
Oh,
just stop. Once
Yes,
the stone's out, we want to slam dunk that.
yes.
So you anticipate starting when the bats are no longer around next November
There's-
through next March?
Yeah, there's that window. So in that October, November timeframe, that's when the construction would start. And then it would be completed in September of 26.
We're talking this. Approvals.
Yes,
So I understand when the trees will come down and the driveway will be completed by September 26th
yes.
is your goal.
Yep.
Okay,
Do you think the contractors will use that entrance and not use it with the school buses for now?
Been discussed.
Most likely, yes. Not initially, but most likely as we get into construction, yes.
so we need to put the signage up before they start.
It wouldn't.
People come flying around that
Yeah,
corner.
we-
If you have a
There
truck
would there would
coming
be,
out,
there would be traffic signage there, yes, for construction purposes, yes.
You mean for the speed limit?
Yeah.
Or what are you referring to?
Construction trucks entering and exiting.
you have to, it has to be if they're using that driveway as a construction driveway or any other kind of driveway, there would have to be the stop signs or something in place. It's a dangerous corner.
I just didn't know if you were referring to the speed limit.
I mean, we
talked
can drop
about
the speed
earlier.
limit and it's
Yeah,
technically
yeah,
school
that's-
property. Are we able to do that in advance during the construction?
Under construction, we would absolutely have a full logistics and site phasing plan that would show construction signage for the temporary purposes until it's turned over. So there'd be site fencing all the way around the perimeter, all sorts of signage in that area for the construction entrance. That would be part of our logistics phasing plan.
And regarding to the school speed limits, the town code does have a section that deals expressly with that issue, and Brookside Lane has already been designated. So it would just be a local law to add this Van Cortlandt, right? It would be Van Cortlandt to that chart.
Stormy Town Road.
It's Stormy Town, okay. So we would just need to identify the exact location where it's intended.
Is Van Cortlandt designated like that already? It is, and Claremont Road and Havel, or just,
Yeah. That's the name.
that's all right, yeah, so, thank you.
See what's that?
No.
I really appreciate coming out and sharing with us and, working together, so we know everybody, communicate to everybody, that's great.
Thank you. One more question. All right, and then one more question. The curb cut, somebody is asking me when the curb cut would happen. Paul, or curb cut, when?
Yeah, anything we've asked a couple times, is there a form, is there a fee? I don't know if there is something.
Application, but part and parcel of the planning board review is not being the case, so we just do it correctly.
Okay. And if
Deal with
only,
Peter, deal with the planning board. I mean, not the planning board, the building department. Okay. Okay. No, everything's through the state for
Okay.
that, yeah.
But I would ask the town if there are any plans of the sewer line, if we could get a copy of those that runs through the easement on the school property. I think, okay, all right. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, okay.
But Paul, are there any plans to add fire hydrants in there? And
There would be
there is a
fire hydrants,
right at
there's
that
all
entrance now.
NFPA regs
Right,
and all that all the way around the building and whatnot. So yeah, for sure.
I know we don't have very robust stormwater infrastructure along Stormy Town, so. I'm
That's
glad
why
you're-
we're-
I'm glad you're.
We're
I think
going
you-
the other way. And we worked with PIA.
Okay. Okay, and then, of course, on the other side of this slope, you know, we had the cemetery on our side, Torview is on the other side. At the other bottom of a hill. So, you know, I know it looks nice and flat there, but it's really, it's really it goes straight down to Torview's tennis courts and parking area and straight down our cemetery. That's kind of, you know, you're building at the peak of the hill and the two areas it goes, so.
Sharon and I
hope
walked it
you would-
the other day, so
I-
we're fresh
I
in our
hope
mind.
you
So, and we'll
give
be
the-
walking it again
I
at
hope you
least
give
2 or
them
3
the
more
same
times.
consideration, with stormwater as you do our resting people.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
And did you have something?
I have a separate comment. I want to publicly thank Jim Minahan for transporting my children for 20 years to the school district. And no one does a better job than you do as director of transportation. Your job is so hard, so hard. I just want to publicly thank you. 20 years of transporting my kids.
He's up, he's focused, he wants to talk about weather.
I know.
Yes, thank you very much,
Thanks, everybody.
Mary, Christine, Alita, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's pretty bad.
And thank you, Valerie. Did we cover everything?
Some of my friends have explanation.
Okay. Give them a moment.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
Here, bye-bye.
take care. All right. That was very informative and a lot to digest.
Uh-huh.
Even though I've been looking at it for weeks. Anyway, our next discussion is local law number 1 of 2025, number 2, where are we?
I mean, they could be in whatever order they end up being
Okay,
presented in.
all right. So Christy, did you want to?
So
to this?
in the discussion that the board had a few weeks ago, I guess probably before the new year because it was before the reorg meeting. About fees, your fee schedule, one of the issues that came up was whether people, organizations, entities that want to rent a town park or an area of a town park can then charge for admission for the event that they're having. And so this was something that the board had discussed as, you know, the intention being, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so feel free to jump in. The intention isn't for people to be profiting off of town parks. And so I drafted a local law which would add another section to section 138.3 of the town code, which regulates permits for town parks. To say no person, organization, or entity renting an area of a town park may sell tickets or require payment for admission to the rented area, but may request a voluntary donation. Should a tax exempt, not-for-profit organization or entity wish to require payment for admission to the rented area of a town park for a charitable purpose, they must make an application to the town board at least 30 days in advance, which the town board may approve or deny in its sole discretion. So pretty much the general policy would be no charging, no requirement to charge. If you want to ask for donations, that's fine, but the failure of someone to provide that donation cannot exclude them from the area. However, specifically for tax exempt not-for-profits, with the charitable goal in mind. For instance, the Galata House, the Polar Plunge, something like that. They could require someone to pay, but they would need to come to the town board in advance. What we've done in the past is in the form of a license agreement between the town and the applicant, in order to memorialize what the intention is. And as we did again this year with Galata House. So with respect to the tax exempt not-for-profit organizations, it's pretty much just memorializing and codifying what's already in the town's practice, while also legislating the general rule, which is no charging, no mandated payment in order to access an event that is being held in a town park.
And I think you encapsulated our conversation that we had during the work session very well, with this draft, so thank you. Galata House actually lets you go to the event, they just want you to sponsor it. But that's a whole different scenario, but they actually let people come to the event for free, they just don't let you jump, I don't know. That's a
Well,
whole separate, but yes.
It was the closest thing that I could think of as being analogous,
Yeah.
because they're trying to raise money for a charitable purpose.
Exactly.
And so the town acknowledges that and allows them
Right,
to
and
do it
supporting
and
that.
has been for several years.
Right, so
Um,
yeah, coming a not-for-profit, for a charitable reason can come to the board for a license agreement for that. Okay. I think it was this law the law you drafted pretty well encapsulated it. Does anybody else have any comments?
Exactly the same thing.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Did we include in here that residents or anybody visiting the parks not participating in an event have the right to be there?
Yes, it means you can't exclude means that they can come
Okay.
in.
Okay. Cool.
Let her double check.
So if someone's having an event and they've rented a certain area of the park, you want it to be in the law that anyone else can also, so there's no exclusive rentals, is that what you're saying?
No. Like, let's say someone's renting a pavilion,
Mhm.
but someone wants to use an adjacent playground.
Mhm.
Like, they should not be excluded from using the adjacent playground, like at Ryder.
Yeah, I think that depends upon the town designating the area that's being rented.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we're talking about all three of our town parks or just the Lewis Angle?
This is all of them.
Oh,
Cedar
Um,
Lane, Ryder Park.
Gerlach.
Ryder, Gerlach, Engel, and Cedar Lane.
Yeah.
I think in the code it actually referenced another one, but I don't think I.
Yeah, because what comes up to mind usually is when a nonprofit organization that's in town, being the Elks, the Moose, the Italian Club, whatever it was, Columbus Lodge would rent a pavilion for a family picnic for a month, for a night, for one day in the summer, right? Their members are just paying an entry fee to come to that event at the location to go.
They're paying a donation.
They're paying a
to go to
donation
the
to go,
event,
right?
To eat.
To the nonprofit organization. We're preventing somebody from just showing up and saying that they can't be there.
Well, I mean, yes, that is kind of the challenge of this. And it is something that we have talked about in the past
Yeah.
is how do you actually enforce this? If someone has a birthday party and says, hey, could you chip in $20 to cover the costs of everything, or they're having a big barbecue and, cover food or something like that. In reality, how is the town gonna know, on a practical level? I think it's more for the intention of when larger, almost commercialized type events come and publicized events come to the town. That it will become more apparent, and that way the messaging is clear from the town's perspective that this is what we expect when you rent one of our parks. And then if someone deviates from that, then at least there's a mechanism for recourse if the town finds out about it.
Makes sense.
I mean, I understand wanting, like the footprint of the pavilion or the 20 feet around the barbecue to be for that one family or group that rented it.
Mhm.
But not, you can't play soccer in the field right in front of it. You know, or use the spray park.
That seems to be a different issue, though.
Yeah, it's a different issue.
So do we want to talk about that? Because that's not really something that was contemplated at all.
I'm just making
Yeah.
sure that this law doesn't speak to that.
It speaks to the
People selling
applicant,
tickets to.
it speaks
Yeah.
to the applicant and what they intend to do
Okay,
with the area of the park that they are given as part of their application.
which
So the
actually,
area of the park is like the secondary issue. It's the applicant, it's what type of entity they are
Okay,
and what they are doing
so the type of event.
for the people that they're asking to come, yeah.
And the applicant and type of applicant, whether it's nonprofit, tax exempt.
Okay, when I read it, it sounded like it encompassed our conversation well.
no, I think it's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if the board is so
We can always
inclined,
change it.
we can, yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's-
that was gonna be my next point.
Oh, sorry.
You know, we still have to go through the whole local law process. So if the board's so inclined, at your legislative session next week, we could put a resolution on to call for the public hearing. And I guess your next legislative session after that would be the 11th. So we could call for a public hearing to be held on the 11th. And, you know, that you could see if there's any feedback from the public, if the board has any more time to think about it. You may want to get some feedback from Bill Garrison, since he administers these permits pretty regularly. He may have some feedback. And then we could take it from there, but it's certainly subject to change. It's just a starting off point to get the conversation and the process going.
The fees have been established already, right? We did the fees already with our fee schedule last week.
Yeah.
So that's already.
Reminder, the fee schedule can always be amended just via resolution.
Okay.
And in addition to the fee schedule, yeah.
It was just really because the fee schedule generally refers back to a provision of the code that authorizes the fee. So we discussed it in the context of the fee schedule, but without the corresponding local law. So it's pretty much just to have that matching.
All right.
Okay. Moving on to our third item, the next local law, 2025, the extension of the time frame for cabaret licenses. I don't know how it is for younger people, but time's flying for me, and every time I turn around, it feels like the same people are in front of me for the cabaret licenses, and some entities really haven't been a challenge, and we really haven't had anybody complaining, or there've been no complaints, not so with others. But the board's discussion and thought was that for entities that have had 3 consecutive years of cabaret licenses without any issues, let's say, that we would have the option of, or we would be able to extend the time frame to 3 years. Does that encompass? do have some more?
You could do, I mean, the way the special permits work that the zoning board issues is that there's discretion to extend it up to, so there could be a ceiling. But the board, you could leave it within your discretion to maybe not go all the way to the 3 years if you so prefer. If if you'd rather them come in every 2 years or something like that, based upon the location. One of the things that might be a little bit challenging is that just because there's a complaint doesn't necessarily mean there's an issue, right? A neighbor could not be happy because there's a commercial business that's operating. And it can be loud, but that's not necessarily mean they're in violation of the cabaret license or that they're in violation of the code. So I think we would just have to kind of think through, because this was something that I think would be up for the board to be careful of, and I'm sure to make sure that there was some mechanism where if there are issues, they would have to either come back before the board or there would have to be some sort of further review. But it's a little challenging to determine exactly what that would be.
Yeah, I mean, and we have some that nobody's ever come to talk about them. We have some that people would like to be heard, and we do want our residents to have the opportunity to be heard, whatever their concerns are, with an establishment that's, you know, providing music. And quite honestly, the residents can speak to us at any time. They don't have to wait for the hearing, but I would like the flexibility to be, you know, I think the board agrees, we'd like the flexibility to be able to extend the time between the licenses.
For people that are in good standing.
Right,
For
right.
valid.
And at least, you know, having had it for 3 years.
Yeah,
without
and
any-
that was, you know, a new business that's coming in. They would have to do it annually for the first 3 years to make sure that there aren't any concerns. And if it's one where, you know, a lot of people are concerned about noise, then maybe it is appropriate to continue to do it every year, just to make sure that the board, if necessary, because as part of the cabaret license, you can put conditions on the operations, which you've done in the past, whether it's sound attenuating measures,
Mhm.
or, you know,
Time
limiting the
limits.
hours of operation, limiting the hours of outdoor operation, even though amplified music is never supposed to be played outside. That was a little bit more challenging in the early days of COVID, obviously.
I think Angela brought up at the last meeting too, what happens if there's a change of owner? So is there any mechanism we could put in if, you know, so we're used to the owner, they're in good standing for 5 years, but then all of a sudden there's a new owner, same name of the restaurant. Can we still have them come in? Is there a mechanism we could? bring
So
them back?
I think that's responsible.
that's already, there is a section of the code 6823 that addresses change in ownership. If the person to whom such cabaret license or renewal is granted shall convey 51% of his interest in the ownership of cabaret to another person, then such cabaret license or renewal shall cease and be void and no further force and effect. So the entity and the ownership of the entity have to remain the same. Otherwise, they have to come in for a new cabaret license. And I think that would apply, because remember, and we saw this a little bit with what the village was dealing with, I guess maybe last year or 2 years ago. There's cabaret license at the local level, the town code level. There's also cabaret licenses and different type of licenses at the state level. And they don't necessarily mean the same thing. What a cabaret means to us, it means amplified music and serving that alcoholic beverages. That's a cabaret license to us. At the state level, there are a lot of different subcategories as it relates to your liquor license. So that they still have to do that. And I believe a change in ownership would precipitate a need to update that information at the state level as well.
Yeah, and while you're on that, the liquor license, that's another point. I wasn't thinking about 3 years, but I think the liquor license is only a 2-year issuance.
Oh,
So I think we can't go over the 2 years because they could be operating with no liquor license and we gave them 3 years.
Hmm.
Right,
Oh, that's
so,
interesting.
so I'm thinking that we should follow their, just to make sure 2 years, because then we'll make sure the liquor license is effective and we could put anything in there, just to make sure while you're not coming here every year, but at least show that you have an active liquor license,
that's a good point.
so.
Because one of the things, like I suggested, we might want on the first local law, we might want to have Bill Garrison weigh in. If the board wants to move forward with the cabaret local law, it might be while to talk to the clerk, the police department and the building department, because they generally administer or weigh in on the cabaret licenses when they're submitted. So perhaps in presenting this to the clerk, we could ask them what they think about the logistics and if it would be practical for them, even though the applicant I think they do send out notifications, right, in the fall that the property owners should be making their applications for a cabaret license.
Yeah, so they usually go out either the end of October, the beginning of November, so they can get all their paperwork started along with the fee and how much it's gonna cost them for the year.
So maybe on those off years, the clerk could still just send out the notification, but just say, just give us your liquor license, or just show us that your liquor license is still active or valid.
Yeah, I
Okay,
wondered
so-
if the state would let us know too, if it was revoked, that they would send us, would they notify the village that they're in or the town? Or
If they know.
if they know, that's the whole thing to us, yeah, but I would leave it up to the applicant to show us that he has a good standing liquor license.
Right.
Would we still be collecting like a yearly fee from them, or would just that one fee settle for the entire 3 years?
That's a board decision.
I think we just.
'Cause
have to
what-
set the
yeah,
time first.
yeah. Cause I mean, like what we could do is rather than having them come up for like a public hearing, they could just fill out like a basic application, see if everything's the same. And then we could ask, like you said, for like the liquor license status and then just hand over the check amount if that's at the board. Yeah.
So
instead of
basically,
a public hearing, it would just be a renewal of your cabaret license, but you wouldn't need to go before the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of kind of like the village, for example, just to offer an example. So the village, they get an application that gets reviewed by all the departments and then it just gets presented to the board as a resolution. There's no public hearing that's called. It's not noticed or anything. So maybe something like that.
that's
for
how they
the
handle all
office.
their cabaret license applications?
Correct, yeah, there's, what they do is they usually just present them during like a work session, and that's kind of where, corporation counsel and the clerk present them to the board and tell them this is an application, next week it's gonna be on for resolution. There's no public hearing that's called every year. In addition to them having the different tier systems as well. Those are two of the biggest differences. So I'm not sure if maybe that's something that the board would consider, perhaps for maybe the off years, where they don't have to come up for the board for public hearing.
I guess, why have it go even to the board then and not just have it be administratively handled, whether, through the clerk or whatever?
If the board wants to hear from the public to see if there are any concerns.
But if there, I guess if there's no public hearing anyway, I mean, I guess the public can do public comment, but this seems like
I think I would be comfortable if we just send them a letter that they attest that everything has remained the same since your original application. And if they just sign it, that they know, and they swore by that everything has remained the same, and they mail it back to us and it's filed.
And then every
Yeah.
3 years have them
No,
come.
it has
for-
to be 2 because liquor license definitely expires every 2 years.
That's what you're saying, is they can sign something attesting they still have a
For
liquor
the 1 year,
license.
for the 1 year that they're not
For the
coming
1
back, but then the second year they have to come probably in front of us because they have to show that their liquor license was renewed and it's the same type, right? Because is there certain different types of
Yeah,
liquor license?
restaurant,
So what any thoughts you guys
Right.
have, just to see how that would work?
So the way that the clerk's office did it when I was there is that they send them the application, how they submitted it last year. And then they ask them, are there any changes from last year? So that system's already kind of been set up. So that's, again, one thing to take out of that too.
That would be.
yeah, no, I like that. I think that's a lesser burden for the applicant and for us, frankly.
Okay, so that's on the interim years.
Yeah.
So every other year it would be that, and every other year it would be come and see if there's any.
I think that's a good start. And
Okay.
doing every year.
How much fees were?
Same fee? Same yearly fee, just no
Yearly.
public hearing.
And that would be included in the paperwork. That what we're asking them if anything's changed to. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so, so it sounds like they send the current information that they are on file with and ask them to check that nothing has changed and submit their fee through the clerk's office on the alternate year. For us, it'd be on the alternate years. It would still go through the same process, but there would also be a public hearing for the public to talk about the establishment.
So the 2025 fee schedule sets the annual license fee for cabaret at $300. And presumably that covers the cost of, publishing the public hearing and all of that the administrative side of having the applicant come in and preparing all of that. Having the police and the building department weigh in. So does the board want to consider a lesser fee for those interim years, or do you want to leave it at 300 across the board?
Can we tier it? Can we say it's 300 annually for a cabaret license for everybody has come, new businesses start, they have to come every year. But maybe 150 for the year, off the years, that they don't have to pay for all the publishing. I mean, I don't know how much that is to publish it. and all that.
Martha?
Like, what it would be cost us to break even to handle an in-between year? As far as if we have to send out notices.
So the way that it currently works right now is everything is done online, so nothing is mailed anymore. Everything is done online, everything's done via a seamless docs link. In regards to the publishing of the public hearing, we usually post it on the Gazette. And then, currently we have not received a charge for that, to my understanding. But there could possibly be a charge for that later in the future. But that's typically the way that it works. Since we've made everything much more online in the clerk's office, it's a little bit much of an easier lift.
So there's no fees associated with noticing the public hearing.
To my understanding, by the time I left the Gazette, no, we have not received any invoices from the Gazette. Were we to publish onto the Journal News, then there would be a charge of, I want to say, like around $150, depending on, their spread and how much wording and lettering we're going to have. But right now, we've just typically done it in the Gazette, and then we've emailed the owners to let them know that the public hearing is happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the applicant would have a problem on an off year if we label it as an existing cabaret license. At 150. Right?
I think we need the clerk to weigh in on,
To see how much stuff.
what, how that works with her seamless docs, how that works with
Mhm.
the other. I would really want to hear the clerk's thoughts on that one. She usually has opinions. Okay,
So do you want to hold off on this one and get some more feedback? Because right now we're at the point where we're not changing it for 2025 because everyone's supposed to be
everybody's-
coming in at this point. We're actually, we held a few public hearings a couple weeks ago, as you all recall. So we'll have resolutions on for that next week. So I think the intention would be to start this for the 2026 calendar year. So it's not as urgent. It's just something that we've kind of been talking about intermittently for a long time. So seems like since it was fresh on our brains, it would be a good time to talk about it.
Because we have total about 8 applicants in the town.
six?
I can
Around-
think of 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so and we already did 3. We already approved 3, so.
Yeah. Maya
Well, I
Riviera,
think we can
Briarcliff
base-
Manor.
And Flames.
Flames was last time, weren't they?
They were here, yeah.
Yeah. Terra Rustica, sorry.
Okay, and then some other new businesses that might be opening. That might need it.
512.
Yeah, I think we prepare ourselves to be ready for 2026.
Okay.
So I want a little more information from the
Yeah.
clerk and start there.
So just to clarify, so then for next week, when we have resolutions to approve of them, they're going to be for the 2025 year.
Yes.
Got it.
No, I'll prepare those.
2026.
No, for what we approved,
Oh.
what we put on the agenda for the board's consideration next week will be cabaret licenses for 2025.
Gotcha.
As we've done in the past.
And the 3 applicants will qualify for good standing, right? And been established for 3 years, these applicants here.
They,
Just-
Flames is,
they've all been Flames.
I think this is the second year with them.
Yeah, I don't remember them coming in.
They're, this
a
is, they're
couple years
new.
ago. Yeah, they were here last year,
Yes,
definitely.
absolutely.
Maya Riviera, definitely. And the Briarcliff Manor, obviously. Okay, so we won't put this on, so to answer everyone's question about the numbers. We'll start with local law number 1 of 2025, which will be the park area. And then we'll get some more feedback from the department heads on the cabarets. And when that's ready to come back around, that'll be whatever local law we're up to. Because I guess we may have to talk about also doing a local law per the discussion tonight about
School safety. zone,
the school
child safety
district,
zone.
yeah, the school traffic zone.
Thank you for joining us for our chilly January work session. I think we talked through a whole bunch of issues and learned a lot. So we will be adjourning to executive session for contracts, advice of counsel, and any litigation. No, okay. Contracts, advice of counsel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good evening, everyone.